The Redline Narratives Podcast is your go-to for understanding how Boston's infrastructure plans impact all of us. We discuss everything from zoning to community planning, complicated engineering terms, ties to historical redlining and urban renewal, and even the cultural implications of development. It's all about making sense of complex topics and ensuring that you have an informed voice in these changes. We'll be having special guests, city officials, experts, you name it, in order to help us answer the questions so we can make positive changes in our community. So let's lock in and hit these streets. Welcome. Hi, everyone. Marlon Solomon here, and welcome to the Redline Narratives Podcast. Today is our episode on Roslindale Square parking justice. Basically a part 2 to this saga that we're kind of seeing taking place here in Roslindale. As you guys may have known from the first episode, this podcast will be helping us learn more about some of the impacts that's going to happen in regards to the current rezoning of many different parts of Boston: Hyde Park, Fields Corner, Mattapan, Cleary Square. But just for those who didn't know, the City of Boston Squares and Streets rezoning plan is about outlawing about 6 different options. So basically heights of buildings in what they call transit-rich neighborhoods in about a 1/3 mile radius, although the influence of these changes will be felt way farther. And, it's going to change a lot of the cultural, the economic. It's really going to shake up a lot of things because obviously when you develop things, property values get higher. When property values get higher, then certain people cannot afford to live in these areas anymore. So one of the purposes of the Redline Narrative Podcast is to make sure that we're all knowing what's going on and being informed. So let's get right to it. All right. So parking justice. Okay. So we're going to cover a few things in this podcast. The parking dynamics, right? Exploring how parking availability and policies affect communities. A lot of these things you may not even realize are going to affect, like metering, the effect of bus transportation, and also the effect of bike lanes. Now, before I get into it, I just want to say that I do a lot of talking in this realm, and when I do it, I try to explain how little minor things can affect businesses in an area, right? You may not even think about it. You may think this is just like, if it's a couple of minutes here that you don't have to park, or you have more access to another location without the ability to get out your car comfortably, all these things form resistance. And the resistance that it forms is what allows people to not come to your business. How many of us wanted to go downtown and didn't go because of there's no parking, right? So parking dynamics that exist in Roslindale, right? So in fact, before I go to because before I get into it per se, let me just do a little tour of Roslindale as we see things today. All right, so here we go. So this is from Google Maps, and you can see this is Roslindale. This is Adams Park right here. This is Healy Field over here. So this Washington Street. Forest Hills is down this way, right? And we're going to look at some of the parking that's currently there. So this is Municipal Park municipal lot, pardon me. Number 8, it's a South Street, right? And a lot of you can get there. Come down Washington, you go up here, you go around this bend, right? Corinth, Belgrade, right? So this is the municipal plot 8, and this is the commuter rail parking, right? They're all in there. Then there's street parking, right? This is not parking at all. This is now for, you can see the little chairs and street, it's kind of like outside seating for some of the businesses there. And this is, and then the last thing that exists is kind of like private parking, right? So you can't really park here, although I don't think that stops a lot of us Bostonians, but right? So street parking, there's some city parking, and then of course there's the commuter rail parking, and last private parking, right? So it's a critical resource, right? Now it's vital for local businesses. A lot of this information, before I get started, I want to send a shout out to the Roslindale Coalition for sending me a lot of this great data. So yeah, it's vital for local businesses. So let's look at, they have a couple of sources here. The Boston Transportation Department, the Roslindale Business Survey of November 23rd, 2022, where approximately 90% of the business owners reported that their customers traveled by car. So therefore, it's very important, right? If your businesses are coming in, if business customers are coming in, they ride there, they need a place to park. Parking is access. It may seem like a little thing to a business, but it doesn't matter if the car can get there if nobody can park comfortably and get to your business. I mean, it sounds very straightforward, but yeah, it's actually that important. And then over 60% indicate that limited parking availability adversely affects their business, highlighting the crucial role of parking in customer access and business viability. Now, a lot of times when you think about, oh, well, I mean, a few customers don't make it, right? Now, I don't know about y'all, but if you have any sort of business, you know that the margins are tight, especially in this economy. Simple 10-15% reduction in revenue could mean the difference between being in or out of business. And that is why all these little things, while they may not seem like much, they add up and they could actually put a lot of businesses out on the streets. So second was the scarcity impacts, right? Where we talk, the source of this data is from Boston Transportation Department Roslindale Parking Study of October 2021. The study reveals a significant shortage of parking, especially during peak business hours and crucial days of the week, underscoring the challenge of meeting customer needs and supporting local commerce. So, right, this is not me saying this, okay? Don't kill the messenger. This is the data that the actual Boston Transportation Department has come up with, right? And this is what it says. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the parking dynamics and what they have planned. So this is like we showed in the Google Maps illustration. This is Adams Park, right? And around here, we're going to take a particular focus on where we see where the A is Poplar Street. This is a picture of Poplar Street with a corresponding arrow, right? And you can see here that we have some very big differences in how much space is actually for a car. This is the bus lane, and this is, I believe, it's not any kind of lane. It's just kind of like some striped things, but I'm sure bikes can use it. Now, what they are proposing, this is from the City of Boston Roslindale Square draft small area plan, which was released just recently, December 2024, right? And this shows what they plan to do, or what they're proposing to do, which is to basically close the street off on the weekends for events. For any of y'all who've gone to Roslindale Square, right, on the weekends, you'll notice that in the middle of Adams Park, they're always farmer market. I have a good friend, and she's always down there, selling her fantastic Haitian food down there. And I think, and this, so I actually, of course, go down there and support the businesses, the pop-ups that show up on these days, the farmers markets, maybe events or what other things. So, but one of the issues would be that if you close it off, what does that mean for the businesses that are along this right-hand side here, right? And this is, corresponding on their picture. I got this picture, like I said, from their report. So this is, you can only imagine. Now, some would say, okay, well, maybe that would increase business. Well, that depends on the kind of business you have. If you have a business that relies on people driving by, things like that, it may not be so useful. All right. So, Poplar Street dynamics, and we're going to put the equity in focus. All right. So, when you look at these parking dynamics of the square, you're going to see that, well, every business on Poplar Street, that's the street I just showed you, right, is owned by individuals from Latinx, Black, Asian, and immigrant backgrounds. A unique characteristic within Rosendale. In fact, there's the place where they have, I think it's called a Crab Shack, and they have some great garlic shrimp, and you get it in the bag, and it's all messy, but it's so good. So, and there's a Greek restaurant there as well. So, right on that stretch, first of all, it's quite different. The Poplar Street is the only location in the Roslindale Square core commercial district where all parking spaces have a minimum of 5 minutes. So you have to park for only 5 minutes, y'all. I think I've probably been on this podcast a little bit longer than 5 minutes. So, and then this is in comparison to the rest of Roslindale. It has way less restrictive parking policies, and we'll get into that. But these are the critical questions, right? Does the intersection of strict parking limitations and racial ethnic identities of business owners suggest an underlying bias in the local infrastructure policies? How do these severe restrictions affect the accessibility and success of these minority-owned businesses? In fact, I know a business that was shut up in that same corridor just recently. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not here to cast intent on whoever is designing these things in the government or whatever, right? I am not here saying people are sitting in a little room rubbing their hands going, oh my God, how are we going to get them? We're not saying that. But what I'm going to say is that I can see what the effects of these policies will have. Okay, and why they're being done, that's for people in getting paid way more than me to answer. So we'll leave it at that. So these Poplar Street dynamics, right, and accessibility and focus, right? So we're going to look at some of the ownership dynamics, right? We've already talked about that. This is all BIPOC owned businesses, right? And they have the 5-minute parking limit, which is the most restrictive in the area, which is unlike some other places just around the corner that have 1 to 2 hour limits, in particular Corinth and Belgrade section, which we'll get to, which you can see in the lower picture there. Right? So this infrastructure consistency, right? They're bike lanes, bus stops, and these are pretty much uniform across all of the locations, right? There's either bike lane or no bike lane. In fact, there's no real bike lane too much around most of these places, as you can see. It's just really bus stops and some parking, street parking, that is, right? So there is a little bit consistency there, at least in this section. Proposed weekend closures for events focus on popular street disproportionately affecting its primary minority-owned businesses. All right, now that is something like we talked about now. Now, when you go a little bit deeper, right, and you start accessing some of the economic and social impacts of this work, the parking limits combined with the selective closures now limit the customer accessibility, right? When people come there, they're either going for an event or there's actually food being sold in the park, and it's this. It makes it. I mean, it's like going downtown to or go. Oh, perfect, because my Boston Celtics, I bleed green, yo. So what about you? It's like staying away from North Station when the Celtics are playing, right? Or or the Bruins, right? The more traffic, the more congested things are. It's just a put off. People don't want to come, right? Where am I going to park? Where am I going to do things, right? And I know we've shown these other parking spaces, but as that, the municipal lot, the commuter rail, which is really only for commuter rail people. I mean, if you're not supposed to use it just because. Um, and you now have what the Boston, so you can say BPDA, the Boston Transportation Department has already said that it's already a scarce commodity, and with the further rezoning, which is supposed to expand housing and increase the activity in that area, it's only going to get worse. All right. So when you now have this flyer that you see here is kind of a flyer about some of the a meeting that was had to kind of discuss this pedestrian with the community, right? Um, and then lastly, as I talked about earlier, is the area of influence. Okay, one of the things that is going to inhibit or the success of these businesses is the area of influence in and around the area. Once you develop this area and you start bringing in more people and becomes more attractive, these are what we call add values, and they're going to increase the property values and increase the because hey, if I have a business, right, I want to be in those spots, right? I want to be where all the action is, and once as a landlord knows that, I'm going to charge more because hey, you want to be here, pay the price. So that's going to make it a little more difficult for our BIPOC businesses to stay in place. All right. So it's very crucial for all of us, right, to engage in community members and go to the planning meetings. And I know we're all busy and I know we have a lot of things to do, but nonetheless, this is going to happen to our communities. And once these developments come up and people get pushed out, people look, oh, the businesses will still be there. Well, it doesn't really work like that, right? Imagine like an African American barber, right? And he's surrounded by African American community, and then guess what? All the customers leave because they can't afford to live in the area, so they go to find other barbers. So either you have to move with your client base or not. In this case, there's a lot of Latino businesses in the area, and you probably want to go to a place that speaks Spanish, and then and have your people and have your laugh. Everybody knows that the barber is like he's the therapist, he's the family counselor. You know how it is. So you've developed relationships, and once it's too difficult for you to get there. Remember, this is not about stopping people, it's about resistance. Is there going to be enough resistance to get that 10-15% down, revenue down, where our people cannot make a living doing their business? Now, don't take it from me, all right, because I know I do this work, but I'm not only doing this work, we're communicating with people in the community daily. And this is part of what the Roslindale Coalition sent me. These are direct quotes quoted by the business owners in the area, right? So The first one goes, my customer base is mainly 60 to 70% Latino and immigrants. Almost all come from Boston proper. Not being able to park in the area or find parking or access the business affects them. Cool. Number two, taxes are affected. Immigration are affected. Applying for housing and benefits to their detriment. Not able to comfortably and request my services to help them. Remember, these are direct quotes, so maybe not a primary English speaker. Quote from another business owner. 90% of my customers come from Boston. The zoning changes affect us as business owners and affects our customers who do business in Roslindale. The last one is we feel like we're swimming against the current. Anything we request does not get done. Frustrating. The energy we are spending sometimes feel in vain. So, like I said, these are direct quotes supplied to us by the Roslindale Coalition of what business owners are saying in the community. All right. Now, let's go to metering practices. Okay. Now, metering, you got to pay the meter to pay and park, right? This is another way, a minor way that you can get a little resistance. So if I make it every 5 minutes that you can only park for 5 minutes, right? Before you have to put in another quarter into the meter, that's now resistance. So it's more trouble. And like I said, this is not things, a lot of times we feel we control the environment and don't realize how much the environment controls you. And when you go to a place and like some blocks that are primarily Latinx and they are subject to 2-hour metering from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week, right? That creates an economic burden. And the BIPOC resident business owner and customers are compelled to continuously feed the meter to maintain parking access or get ticketed, right? Now there's other areas close by, right? And you can see them here, where you can see blocks predominantly occupied by white residents benefit from non-meter resident-only parking, exempting them from similar costs and restrictions. Areas with 75 to 80% white residents have minimal metering, offer 4-hour parking spaces, and include zones designated for resident parking only. In contrast, areas with more diverse demographic, more diverse demographic face stricter metering regulations that demand frequent payment, impacting both residents and visitors. So these are also some quotes provided by Roslindale Coalition. Quote 1, the city would help me and other businesses by simply not adding more parking restrictions. It hurts to hear over and over again how customers choose to stop visiting my business just because they've gotten a $50 or $75 parking ticket. Unfortunately, I can't find a good answer for them, and I instantly lose them forever. If prices for parking go up, my customer flow will be affected. The 2-hour parking does not fit with needs. You have a business, you have a consideration and respect for businesses. You have to have consideration and respect for businesses. You are looking at 3 to 4 tickets a week. If there are taller buildings with more residents, they will compete with my customers. If people who live in buildings without parking don't have cars, well, they have guests and family, and they need a place to park. So what he's basically saying there is that, if you have more people there, there's going to compete for the little parking spaces that's already there. I don't know how many of y'all have been fighting for parking spaces, but this would only get worse if, with more people in the vicinity for these events, for Adams Park, and just make it harder for people who are just coming to get their hair cut or just coming. I think there's an African braiding place I'm not, and I don't know if y'all know about African braiding. You can't braid there's no woman that braid her hair in 2 hours. It's like 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. Trust me, it's not easy being a woman. And it's one of those things that, you know, are these policies as culturally aligned as they should be, right? Um, and I understand that and this is where it goes to intent. I could understand how people who do not spend 6 hours getting their hair braided would not understand how a business would have problems maintaining their customer base, right? Because if you're used to getting your hair done or not getting your hair done at all, this could be a cultural oversight. That's why we need cultural diversity training, right? So it just raises these kind of questions about fairness and how do these rules affect local businesses and community dynamics, especially when they're affecting areas of high diversity, right? Effect of the bus transportation. Same kind of deal, right? So there was an extension without any clear evidence. In 2023, the bus lane on Washington Street was extended without any clear evidence-based reasons restricting parking during key business hours. So, and let me be very clear, there's buses on all the streets. These restrictions are not there. Now, I do understand that Washington Street is a major thoroughfare compared to the rest, but considering that as present on Washington Street, you can only go, I guess, towards Forest Hills in one direction. It is when you're coming back the other way, coming from Forest Hills, going to I guess, Dedham, you will, you have to go on South Street, Poplar, Belgrade, whatever. You have to. There's no other way around it. So, in that regard, those are also somewhat, um, somewhat problematic. Now, let's go back to our. And you can see here. This is what I'm trying to say. So you can go down this direction, right? Quit that, right? You can go down this direction here. Yeah, when you can go this direction to Forest Hills, but when you come back, you've got to go all the way up here. Now, I do realize that there is a diversion. So, like some people who are going to Washington will come down Popular, while some, so it's kind of like halved, while all 100% of the traffic is going this direction. I do get that, but nonetheless, there are buses. In fact, how opportune the Google Map shows a bus at the bus stop there, and there's parking. Not exactly there. I'm not sure if you can park there, but there's parking literally right there, right? And there's a bus stop here, and there's parking. Well, these are 5-minute parking. So, oh no, this is not parking. I don't think this is parking. This is an actual lane. So these are people probably turning right. This this car is moving here. So this looks like it's in motion. Okay. So I don't think there's any parking or 5-minute parking. And there's parking along this way. I know that these cars are probably in line. But yes, so there's no real considerable difference with that. So it's kind of funny that this is the case, right? So, so, like I said, there was no supporting data, pilot study, which was provided despite FOIA, which is, I think, a request for information request, and breaking from the usual practices of such projects. Um, Claims of community support do not reflect the realities of affected business owners, particularly Latinx and Black entrepreneurs who reported significant losses. Business owners cite loss of customers and high parking fines as a result of these consequences. Urgent need for inclusive planning is needed. Now, like I said, there's always going to be a reason why somebody will justify, because that's the way it's always been historically. Like I said, this is Redline Narratives Podcast. A lot of what I'm reason why this podcast exists, because a lot of these narratives that are there was reasons for urban renewal. There was reasons. There's always a reason that you can come up with. I mean, just think about your life. I'm not going to go into details, but think about your life and then how people can make up reasons for just about anything. And if you're not like understanding, or you didn't really understand how things worked, yes, it will make sense. But I urge you to look at the overall pattern. That's where these narratives tend to fall away. When you start looking at why is the trend always like this, and why has the trend historically in Boston been like this, then it starts going, okay, this is not a one-off. This is a trend. This is a pattern, right? And I think that's very important to see that. Why is the pattern always in this way? And this takes us to the effective bike lanes, which is another critical thing. So if you guys have been to PS Gourmet Coffee right there, so this is Washington Street, right? And this is the PS Gourmet. It has the $1 coffee, right? So it's a place where if you're trying to get some cheap coffee in Boston and you're not trying to be a Dunkin' Donuts, this is a good place to go, right? So I would like to point out that whilst you're looking around, right, there's this skinny bike lane here, right, along here. And that's one of the things I find to be just, I get it. We all want to encourage the use of bikes, but I really would like to see some data behind this bike lane. It cannot be a sentimental thing on our roads in Boston, because our roads are skinny already, right? These are, although I've been fighting back against the horse and carriage, most of Boston was developed for trolley lines. There's trolley line that used to be on that road right there, right? So they're skinny, they're small already. So by the time you take out parking, you really may not be able to afford, especially on these major thoroughfares, right? So we're saying that you need to take away the parking and put bus lanes because of it's such a busy thoroughfare and this other stuff. However, there needs to be a bike lane when we do not see any bikes. I think of it as a space that could be much better utilized. Not that it's not important, but there are other things that are also important. Now, this bike lane and this barricade here actually is a peculiar aberration that it does not happen in the other places inside Roslindale Square. And so this area used to be where, it's kind of like a 15-minute, 5-minute, maybe the Uber Eats guys come in, he parks here, goes, picks up what he wants to pick up, and goes back in and take off. In fact, I'll show you on the next slide. I was taking my drone shots, and within my batteries don't last more than 30 minutes. And I guess I must have been flying over this area maybe about 5-10 minutes. And there were cars that stopped along the road. I'll show you the picture there. There's a car right here in the bus lane right here, right? So I get it. But maybe the proximity to this space may not be where it needs to be, or what else can we do? I get it. But in the end of the day, this business is suffering because of the this bus lane, and then you now add this bike lane. So at least if you had to choose one, okay, let's leave the bus, but the bike's and I'll show you on another slide. But just before we get a little further, let me show you, like you can see here are some pictures that I took when I was out there. And this is the bike lane here with the barricade. So it's not even like you can't park. But what this does, it doesn't stop people from parking. People are still parking, but now they're parking here because, see, this street here is not very busy. This street is, of all the four in these things, this is the least busy street. It goes to a back route that, those of us that know the area take when we're trying to avoid the traffic on Washington going down Cummings. So this is a back route, so y'all can take this area, but don't be taking it too much because I don't want to be like get this area. I don't get this area all stuffed up, and now I'm stuck. But this introduction of the bike lane with the physical barricades, and then this is now means there is literally no parking for this building. And of course, that will affect business. And these are some of the signs that they put up. Please be courteous to our neighbors when parking. Illegally parked cars will be ticketed or towed. Now, what does that say when you get to the business and you see a sign like that, right? There's another one here. Please refrain from parking on the wrong side of the street. It is dangerous. They're trying to work with people. But as you can see, this is an actual serious problem that is affecting this business. All right. Now, this is the other thing like I was telling you about. So this is my drone shot, and you can see here, there's a car park right here because there's some other businesses, right? So there's a car park right here. This is the real parking right here. But in this front area, there's no parking. And like I said, this area, this road is super busy. So this is the intersection here. This is the road we're looking at. This is super busy. This is super busy. This is super busy. This is not busy. It's never busy. It's never busy. Never have I been in this street and ever seen any traffic ever. All right. This is another look down the street. You can see that car is still there. Okay. So there are no nearby car parking options. This is private parking. So if you like, park there and see what happened to you. Your car will get tizzled. Yeah. So this is what happened. This is the BIPOC kind of business that, services the low income and diverse population. All right. Now, lucky enough, down the street, we have more considerations. So let's look at, and as you can see, there is parking here. And this is where the bus lane is. So either these people are illegally parked. I think the bus lane may be right in this area, but this is you can see that there's parking. But anyway, we're going to look at the PS Gourmet and versus the Square Root. Now, I'm not putting them against each other. So let me just say that. Please visit both of them. Okay, the next time you're in Roslindale, get $4 and you'll be able to get $1 coffee at PS Gourmet. You'll be able to get $3 coffee at the Square Root. It's $2 if you average it out. Enjoy. I got my coffee right here, although it's not from there. It's my own little super strong brew. But nonetheless, you can see their websites. Check them out. So I don't want to be as if I'm putting them against each other. I just want to make sure that people understand that these are the trends. These are the patterns that are just over and over again. I've shown you some already, and I'm about to show you another one. So they offer the $3 small cup of coffee, right? And they also benefit from dedicated curbside pickup right here, 15 minutes. They get the 15-minute curbside parking. All right. Now, is there a big difference? This is a huge intersection. This is Belgrade and Corinth, right? There's all the traffic from, West Roxbury and coming from Dedham, right? Plus the traffic, traffic coming from Washington Street, coming down from over there by Poplar, right? Just to give you guys another break of, so this is Corinth. This is where we're looking at. Okay, so this is the big intersection, right? And you can see this is constantly being used, right? And you have that's the 15-minute parking, right? There's parking on all these sides. There's parking down here. There's bus lane. There is a bus lane here too. So it's not like this has a bus lane. And oh, where's the bike lane? I don't see no bike lane. Oh, I think that might be the bike lane, but it's not like a clear pronounced bike lane. Is that a bike lane? I think that is a bike lane. But anyway, it's not a clear defined one. And it's probably joined in with the road, which is fine. I want people to use their bikes and have space to use their bikes. But obviously, there's two side parking on this side. So there's not enough room for the bike lane. Maybe you should take out parking and put in the bike lane since the bike lanes are so important, right? So back to our thing, right? They're even including thinking about increasing sidewalk space, right? So that they would have more outdoor cafe seating and extension of Alexander the Park, the Great Park, which if we go back to our Google, if we go back to our Google map, believe that park is, yeah, there it is, Alexander the Great Park. So they're going to expand this and even create more amenities on this side while the other sides are kind of having some issues, right? So this is basically, I mean, this is a good comparison that shows more of this trend. Remember, this is about trends and how it just seems as if it's always in one direction, right? So just in summary, I wanted to say that first of all, I think there's importance to look at some of this parking for the small business and look at how the scarcity and the upcoming zoning and the increased activity, because the purpose of a lot of these rezoning efforts is to activate the streets or to make them more active. And of course, activity sounds great, but who's going to be coming to these? Who's going to be coming to these businesses, right? Who are we attracting to? And then with the attraction to, what competition do we create for these already scarce resources like the parking, that's going to push and create more resistance? Remember, this pattern of resistance and difficulties that seem to be always slanted in one direction, right? So I remember, like I said, it's not about intent. This is about what the actual policies and parking decisions and zoning decisions are doing. And it's up to you to decide what that actually means to and what you think it means. And when you make that decision, right, you need to start advocating, right? There's an equitable distribution of parking meters. And this is something, proposed parking meters. And this is what, these are the little things that, I mean, like, who's going to be walking around Roslindale going, okay, how many minutes is here? How many minutes is here? Or what time of day is, if your business is mainly morning and then there's no parking in the morning, but there's parking in the afternoon, that doesn't help at all, right? And I know what you're thinking. Maybe we can't help everybody, this and that and the other, but that's the pattern. It's always like that, okay? And I just want you to think of one institution in your life, not just parking. What institution in your life where that pattern does not exist? Just name it. Put it in the comments. That's my challenge. So, don't just say, oh, this is parking. We're not going to try to separate and silo issues. What issue? Healthcare, education, parking, infrastructure, it goes on and on. Name it. Policing, housing, banking, name it. That's the pattern. Now, we're all going to sit here and fight for equity and justice, but it's not enough to watch this podcast, You got to advocate. And this is what this podcast is about, to educate you on what to advocate for, right? Higher metering costs, right? Stricter enforcement, um, extend bus lanes without data-driven justification. Why did that happen? How is there a lack of community engagement with all the community? There's so many surveys that have been done where it's like 80% white community that is answering these surveys. And I mean, I go to a lot of these meetings as an engineer or anybody. I always tell my youth, I say, look, the more successful you be, especially in science, the more likely you're going to be the only person in the room. And this is what happens in these circles when these decisions are made. And then I feel like I said, I don't want to cast blame. I just feel that if you don't have a daughter that wants to get her hair braided for her birthday, and she tells you to come pick her up 4 hours later, you're not gonna know, because I wouldn't have known otherwise, right? From the hair salon. So some of these are cultural. Some of these issues are just building on what was there before, which already, like I said, was built with these redline narratives built in. And so we want you to support this petition, right? The Roslindale petition about the development without displacement. We put it on there before. That's the QR code. It's on change.org. We need you to support and make your voice heard. We need you to think about the meetings, send out information. Yeah, if we don't do it, nobody will, right? And so we really want you, people in the community, to understand how important it is for us to really try and get this work done, and advocate so that we can keep these businesses in place. With the upcoming zoning, there's going to be a lot of displacement, and we at the African American Culture Initiative, we're trying our best to get the community engaged, learn and do the research, and try to disseminate it in ways that will bring it to different groups of people. Um, you can see our motto: engineering restorative bridges in underserved multicultural communities. This podcast is one of the more important bridges we're going to be investing our time and efforts in, over this, in the upcoming future, dealing with the displacement and a lot of other things. So we need your support, because there are many more. I can't even, this is just the second one. I know this is a long podcast, but this is just the second one, and we got many more lined up. Even the documentary that's coming out in February. We got so much lined up. So if you please follow us on social media, you can see all the things: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Follow us, subscribe to Afro American TV, where this podcast is being broadcast. But yes, we also need your donation. We're 501c3, and we need your support to make sure that we're building more bridges like the one you watched today. We hope you enjoyed this program. Look out for Afro American Culture Initiative, Afro American Academy. We got our Black History Month event series coming up in February, called Development Without Displacement. We have the Redline Narratives documentary coming up. So there's a lot of things that we're getting into to support, to tell you and keep you informed on what you need to know, so you can make informed decisions and keep the government, the city officials, and whoever accountable for what's happening in our communities, because we can make a change. It's been done before, and we'll do it again. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Have a great holiday season.